Hello, and welcome everybody to the Blue Trails Guide December monthly webinar series. My name is Faye Augustin, and I'm the Intermountain West Blue Trails Manager for American Rivers. I'm really excited that all of you have joined us for this really fantastic webinar that we've got today on making an economic case for water trails. So as always, just a couple quick things about technical support. If your connection is lost at all, please feel free to log in again using your unique web link and passcode that you got when you registered for the webinar. And then as always, we are recording this webinar, and it will be available at bluetrailsguide.org/webinars on this coming Friday, December 18th. We really encourage you to feel free to ask any and all questions that you have during the webinar in order to make it as beneficial for you as possible. In order to ask a question, we prefer that you use the question box on your GoToWebinar side panel, and you can submit a question at any time during the webinar, and then we will leave about 5 minutes at the end of the webinar to go through some question and answers. And like I mentioned before, the webinar will be recorded and available on our Blue Trails Guide website with not only the recorded webinar, but also the answers to any questions that, that were had during the webinar. So with that, I want to jump right into our webinar for this month, which is the economic benefits of water trails. I'm really excited to introduce Natalie Warren, who is now with the St. Croix River Association, but she worked closely with the River Management Society over the last year or so to build the economic benefits of water trails report. So with that, Natalie, I want to go ahead and turn the presentation over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Faye. So this presentation is going to focus on the economic benefits of water trails, but I'll also touch on some other benefits of water trails to start off. First, what is a water trail? A lot of you already know, and for all intensive purposes, blue trail, water trail, whatever word you would like to use there. They're recreational routes on waterways that are managed for canoeing, kayaking, boating, and camping. And they're typically developed by government entities to encourage recreation, conservation, and education. They include a network of public access points and campsites. So even if your water trail or blue trail isn't a designated water trail and isn't necessarily managed, if it has access, if there's access to the water, people can still get out there and use it. So a brief history of water trails. They were not created to be an economic engine for communities, but rather were created to make nature accessible and to encourage environmental awareness. However, they have grown organically to generate money for communities. As we know, there are several benefits to water trails, One is an environmental benefit. So the Northern Forest Canoe Trail Study, which I'll be delving into in a little bit, links outdoor recreation to greater environmental awareness. Through experiencing the water firsthand, paddlers are more likely to care about environmental issues concerning recreation areas. Social benefits. So the Northern Forest Canoe Trail Study also states that recreation communities have lower poverty rates and higher education and health levels. Recreational opportunities can build community pride, provide stewardship opportunities for the community, and provide a place to exercise and to connect. So the focus of this is going to be the economic benefits of water trails. Paddle sports tourism has the potential to diversify economies that have historically relied on one or two industries. Many towns and urban areas have turned their backs on waterfronts due to water quality issues, fear of flooding, dams, and a variety of reasons. Today, communities are starting to envision their waterfronts as a resource to increase tourism and stabilize or grow their economy. So I organized an expedition down the Illinois River starting in Chicago last year, and this is us portaging through downtown Chicago. You can see the canoe right there. I don't recommend it. It was very difficult. But the outdoor recreation economy generates about $80 billion per year in national, state, and local tax revenues. And out of that, water sports generate over $4.8 billion in local and state taxes, according to the Outdoor Industry Association. So it's a huge economic engine. The project that I worked on with the River Management Society was just to create a summary of economic impact studies. What I found was that there were not a lot of economic impact studies of water trails. It's a fairly new area of research. So I compiled the ones that I did find, and I outlined themes, which was somewhat difficult because each of them used different jargon and different ways of measuring the economic impacts. And then I highlighted success stories, and I'll delve into those now. To give you a general understanding of how communities can increased paddle sports tourism can benefit communities' economies, direct impacts are when people come into your town and they need to spend money on boats, or they need to spend money on shuttling, camping, dining, shops. Anything that costs money while they are currently in that area can be considered a direct impact. Direct impacts are measured by visitor expenditures, which are usually taken from visitor surveys. This is an example from the Northern Forest Canoe Trail Study. It's a pie chart of visitor expenditures. So indirect impacts are basically what happens to that money once everyone leaves. When tourists come into the town, they have the direct impacts when they spend their money, and when they leave, that money impacts things like employment in the area, tax revenue, real estate, immigration. The multipliers go on and on. So here's a chart that illustrates that. You have new money coming into the economy. People are spending money at restaurants, outfitters, bed and breakfasts. They need gas when they're going through town. And they also spend money on activities. That's new money coming in that circulates and multiplies in the economy. And then you have some economic leakages, for example, if you have a Starbucks, or if the clothing store gets their products from out of state or out of the country. These are the 3 case studies that I used for the River Management Society summary: the Northern Forest Canoe Trail Study, the Huron River Water Trail Study, and the Pennsylvania Recreational Water Trail Study. So the studies used for this project show that communities which provide amenities for tourists successfully attract a greater number of paddlers. And the communities in those areas that did the best in bringing money in had a lot of these things. So access to the water was very important. Outfitters, a place for people to rent and hire shuttling services. Lodging, dining, integrated recreation, activities, and proximity to neighboring towns and cities that had similar amenities. Now, the studies found that the most important of those were outfitters, lodging, and dining, where integrated recreation and activities, they're important to a thriving paddle sports economy, but they're not necessary. And it's important to know that all of these things have to happen in conjunction with each other. For example, you can't just have access to the water, put in a new boat launch, and expect that a bunch of people are going to start coming to your town. So lodging, this is back to the Northern Forest Canoe Trail visitor expenditures. Whether it's a campsite, a hotel, or a bed and breakfast, lodging was a necessity for communities in the studies, hoping to increase paddle sports tourism beyond the local day paddler. In the Northern Forest Canoe Trail Study, canoeing and kayaking is an activity for an estimated 47% of the guests staying at waterway lodging establishments during the paddling season. And those establishments also accommodate paddlers. 52% of them provide boat rentals for guests to use. As you can see here, lodging made up 28% of visitor expenditures in this area, which is pretty significant. So outfitters are important. This highlights a chart from the Huron River Trail study. And as you can see here, in 2012, they made over $1 million in boat rental. That's the revenue from boat rentals. For restaurants and grocery stores, if people are on an overnight adventure or a day trip, visitors to towns along the water trail often need a place to eat or to stock up on food. So this is from the Northern Forest Canoe Trail study. You can see restaurants made up 57.4% of visitor expenditures, and grocery stores, 60.9%, had the highest probability of visitor expenditures. Other activities, like I mentioned, other activities aren't essential to increasing paddle sports tourism initially, but they do enhance the experience for paddlers coming into the town. This is from the Pennsylvania Water Trail study. Over 70% of visitors cited the reason for visiting as fishing, canoeing, kayaking, or paddling or motorboating, and nearly 30% cited other tourism activities as their reason for visiting the water trails. Those are picnicking, relaxing, enjoying the river scenery, taking photographs, and watching wildlife. This is also from the Pennsylvania study. Visitors reported spending the most days per year, approximately 17.8 days on average, fishing on the water trail. Visitors spent approximately 13.9 days per year on other tourism activities, including walking, picnicking, biking, and floating or relaxing besides the water trail. So tax revenue, an indirect impact. When locals and visitors spend money, it circulates through the community and can create a positive impact on the economy. So tax money goes back into the local community, the state, and the county to improve things like infrastructure, schools, and increased standard of living, amongst many other things. The Pennsylvania Water Trail study shows that over the study period, over $82,000 in revenue from paddle sports tourism went to state and local taxes, and nearly $89,000 went to federal taxes. And similarly, in the Northern Forest Canoe Trail report, which you can read here, an estimated $8.8 million was spent in local economies by paddlers in the 6 study regions, which created $6.6 million in value added to the local economy, $12 million in total economic impact. So real estate and immigration. Amenity-rich communities are often a destination for new residents and retirees. In the Northern Forest Canoe Trail study, it references research that ranks outdoor recreation as the second most important reason for immigration, with social and physical environment factors consistently outweighing employment considerations. So people are choosing to move to a location because of the amenities, not necessarily because there's a job there for them. According to the Huron River Water Trail study, which is where this chart is pulled from, most towns along the Huron River have experienced population growth related to the water trail. So tourists visiting the town for its recreational amenities may choose to retire or relocate to the area. This table shows the projected population for towns along the Huron River, and populations in 8 out of the 11 communities in the study are projected to grow significantly in the coming decades, in large part due to an increased amenities around the water trail. So how is this helpful? If you are an environmentalist trying to convince someone that they should love the river and spend time with the river because they care about the environment, then that's kind of a difficult battle when you're trying to engage new stakeholders. When you talk about the economy and the economic benefits of water trails, it involves everybody. It involves the gas station owner, the bed and breakfast owner. It involves the tourism community, and a lot of those people may not see their relationship to the river or why it's important to care about the health of the river or to provide opportunities along the river. But when you frame this in the economic point of view and use research to back up your arguments, it's a really great way to involve all sorts of stakeholders. So there is a survey if you have time to take it, and I will ask Faye to send this out too. We asked people at the National Water Trails Forum in 2015 to take it, and we have a couple responses. It would be great to get more, just asking what you think the key elements of economic success for a water trail is. And I also am writing a series for canoe and kayak called The Next Best Paddling Town. And if you or someone you know knows about a town along a river or a lake who's doing very innovative things like adding kayak lockers or really trying to promote their town as a river town, definitely send me an email, and I might have the opportunity to write about that area, help with marketing, and hopefully increase paddle sports tourism for them by highlighting their efforts. So this project that I worked on and just summarized was funded by the River Management Society, so thank you to them. If you want to see the full report, it is up on their website, and my email is right down there, so please send me an email if you have any further questions or if you want to let me know about a cool river town by you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natalie, for giving that really excellent overview of the work that you've been doing with River Management Society. I think that a lot of people are always very interested in determining the best way to learn more about how they can describe the benefits of their water trail or their river trail. So at this time, guys, we want to go ahead and open up the webinar to any questions that folks have. So if you haven't already and you've got questions, please feel free to put them go ahead and put them into the question box at this point. We did have one just very brief comment here that's asking if the PowerPoint will be made available after the presentation. And Natalie, would you be willing to share some of the slides so that folks can provide this information and give a some info to other folks that might be interested in this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. And I also mentioned earlier, we will, we have this webinar recorded, so that will be available this upcoming Friday, December 18th. So I will send out that link once it is available and up. And I would encourage you to feel free to share the recorded webinar with folks as well. But we've got a few more questions here. So Natalie, another question that came up that is a little bit more about kind of the actual development of somebody else's own economic benefit report of their water trail. And what are some of the challenges that you kind of came across as you were doing a lot of research for this when it comes to creating an economic benefit report for local communities?
Yeah, so like I said, there wasn't a lot of consistency between them. The reports that I used measured different things, even though there was some overlap. And the visitor expenditures is pretty normal for economic impact studies to include, but they're also very difficult to get data on because they are based on visitor surveys, which can be hard to really account for what's going on. So the information, it's not really streamlined in a way that is encapsulating what's happening in the economy. And from there, to create the indirect impacts, people are using the Forest Service IMPLAM model, which, from my understanding, hasn't been updated in a while. And so there just needs to be more resources and tools provided to people as they go along creating their economic impact studies to increase accuracy and communication between the groups that are doing economic impact studies to increase consistency.
Great, thanks so much, Natalie. The second question that the same person had was, do you know of a good way to pay for a study like this? Are there funding sources that you're aware of, or how say the Hudson Canoe Trail paid for their specific study, or the Northern Forest Canoe Trail paid for theirs?
Mm-hmm. So I would just reach out to the Huron River Watershed Council, because they got funding to do this initial one, and I know they're just finishing up a larger, more accurate one, and they are very open to talking to other people and sharing their resources. So I would just say send me an email and I can connect you with some people who can help you answer that question more accurately.
Great. Thanks, Natalie. The next question that we have is kind of bounces off of the response that you just had, Natalie, was in regards to how accurate these studies are. So is there a way to know, based off of obviously direct versus indirect ways to measure economic benefit, which is more accurate, and how accurate these studies are?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of the frontier right now. Economic impact studies of water trails are fairly new, and I am not an economist, so I can't say whether measuring direct and indirect is better than measuring multipliers, and that's something that maybe on a higher level PhD program somebody could figure out how to make that information more consistent. And in terms of accuracy, I personally think that it would be great if businesses started recording who was coming in and why they were visiting the area, because it's hard for a group to come in and over the course of, say, 6 months, try to take surveys during the paddling season, for example, to document that information, which is a snapshot in time. Whereas if the businesses were more involved with things like visitor surveys, then the information, I think, would be more accurate and helpful for developing an economic impact study.
Great, thanks so much, Natalie. Let's see, we've got, I think, one more question that just came in that is asking about, what is the best way, for, say, a community that is not along one of these trails? Is this information, do you feel like, fairly transferable from one community to another, or is there just sort of general numbers that folks can use?
I think that this information is transferable. The goal of this message is that a community can get together and decide, we want to increase tourism. And this is why we're unique, and this is how we should market ourselves, and this is what we need to provide to people over time so that, in the next 30 to 50 years, the culture of our town changes a little bit to be more focused on the river, or more focused on a bike trail, or more focused on a hiking trail. And does that answer your question?
Yes, yes. Great. We have another one that just came in, which is wondering if you are aware of any studies that have been completed regarding the environmental impact, so of how increased tourism might affect the river health itself, and kind of the idea of carrying capacity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the Northern Forest Canoe Trail talks about that a lot, and it also talks about the negative impacts of increased tourism, overcrowding, and people actually leaving because there are more people in their town. So I would take a look at the Northern Forest Canoe Trail and what they have under the social and the environmental impacts. As far as a study that just focuses on those, I am not familiar with right off the top of my head, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was one.
Great. Thanks so much, Natalie. And then I think we've got time for probably one more question. And this one comes from asking what the best way to promote your, a local community's river to help prevent some challenges that folks have around kind of keeping enough water in the river to help, really use the river itself as a resource, as opposed a recreational resource and an economic tourism resource, as opposed to just, kind of using it for other, consumptive water uses, if there's a good way of marketing it or talking to local decision makers.
Yeah, so I think using this information to involve a greater audience and not only connecting the stakeholders in your own community, but reaching out to communities that maybe share that resource. And it really starts with a slow dialogue, discussing what the benefits are, what you would like to achieve, and how that could make a difference in the community, and that things won't happen right away. From there, you have to have an agreement between the stakeholders with what the vision is, and then from there, you can do anything from businesses have a sticker or a sign out front that say paddler-friendly business, and come in and use our bathroom, and you can stop here and take a shower, and increase signage, but also marketing those opportunities on a comprehensive, easy-to-read website. Yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of things, and I have a separate presentation on steps that small towns can take to increase paddle sports tourism that starts with promoting their area and figuring out why they're unique and why people would want to go there. So whoever asked that question, you can send me an email and I'll send you a link to that other presentation that might help.
Great. Natalie, I think it actually would be maybe really helpful to share that presentation with the rest of the group. So if you would be okay with it, could you maybe we'll send out that presentation as well to folks if you're if you're able to do that, Natalie? Great. Awesome. Well, I wanted to say thank you all again for joining us on our December webinar, and I hope that everybody is having a really fantastic holiday season and continues to enjoy the rest of their December. So as always, we'll be back in January for our monthly webinar. And like I said earlier, this webinar will be recorded and available to be viewed this upcoming Friday, December 18th. So stay tuned for that, and I will send around a link with information about Natalie's report, as well as a link to the recorded webinar and some other resources that Natalie has provided. So thank you all for joining us, and Natalie, thank you so much for taking the time to present the really great information that you collected. So thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you or having you join us in January. Have a great rest of your month.